Poland joins a growing list of world leaders condemning big tech's growing censorship. Big tech sees a plunge in shares. This comes as Snapchat also announces an indefinite ban on Trump's account. Tune into Deep Dive to find out how it all ties together. Hello and welcome. This is Deep Dive and I'm Tiffany Meier. Lots happening. Let's start with Poland's Prime Minister denounced big tech silencing President Trump's social media accounts. He said on Wednesday, algorithms or the owners of corporate giants should not decide which views are right and which are not, adding there is no and can be no consent to censorship. Without mentioning Trump by name, he said freedom of speech is the salt of democracy. For that reason, we must defend it, adding the owners of social platforms cannot act above the law. Poland is set to introduce laws to protect freedom of speech on the internet, adopting the appropriate national laws to regulate the operations of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and other similar platforms. The Polish Prime Minister said discussion consists in the exchange of views, not in silencing people. We do not have to agree with what our opponents write, but we cannot forbid anyone from expressing views that do not contravene the law. Poland is no stranger to censorship, as the country felt the effects firsthand for 45 years under communist rule. The Prime Minister noted when the country was told what they could or couldn't think, adding that is why we are so concerned with any attempt to limit freedom. The Polish Deputy Minister of Justice said the proposed legislation would prevent social media platforms from deleting posts or blocking user accounts at their discretion if the content posted on them does not violate Polish law. Snapchat, meanwhile, is joining the growing list of platforms banning President Trump's account indefinitely. Trump had nearly 2 million subscribers on the platform. Snapchat already suspended his account after last week's violence at the Capitol. It's accusing the president of trying to spread misinformation, hate speech, and incite violence. Snapchat's ban will take effect next Wednesday when President Trump leaves office. And big tech is feeling the effects of the widespread bans. Social media giants' market value is plunging. Over $50 billion in combined market value has been wiped out for social media giants Facebook and Twitter. The downward spiral began just days ago after the platforms banned President Trump. Large tech firms and a number of Democratic lawmakers claimed Trump incited violence at the U.S. Capitol last week. But Trump took to Twitter after violence broke out, calling on protesters to, quote, go home in peace. Twitter restricted a video the president posted last week, followed by a temporary suspension, then a permanent ban 2 days later. Facebook echoed the move. A large number of pro-Trump accounts were also deleted. The president has argued that companies like Google, Twitter, and Facebook will fail due to censorship, saying they've made a catastrophic mistake. Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey, meanwhile, posted a series of tweets explaining the rationale behind banning Trump, but he also noted big tech has too much power. While he said he believes this was the right decision for Twitter, he agreed the internet shouldn't be controlled by a few people. He said these actions sets a dangerous precedent, the power an individual or corporation has over a part of the global public conversation. He said if people don't like his company's policies, they can move to another platform. But he noted that idea was challenged when other platforms also made similar decisions, such as Facebook and YouTube, also taking down Trump's accounts. Many people moved to Parler as a result, but then Apple and Google both banned the app from their app stores, and Amazon removed Parler from their web services, effectively disabling the app. Dorsey offers a solution. He cites his passion for Bitcoin because it's a, quote, foundational internet technology that is not controlled or influenced by any single individual or entity. This is what the internet wants to be, and over time, more of it will be. He suggests an open, decentralized standard for social media, citing an announcement from 2019 when the company announced it was funding a small team, Blue Sky, to create such a standard. He notes that such a project will take time. Dorsey went on to say it is important that we acknowledge this is a time of great uncertainty and struggle for so many around the world. Our goal in this moment is to disarm as much as we can and ensure we are all building towards a greater common understanding and a more peaceful existence on Earth. He ended with, "I believe the internet and global public conversation is our best and most relevant method of achieving this. I also recognize it does not feel that way today. Everything we learn in this moment will better our effort and push us to be what we are, one humanity working together." Let's take a quick look at the words from one of America's founding fathers, Thomas Paine. He's also the author of the book Common Sense. He said, "The greatest tyrannies are always perpetrated in the name of the noblest causes." And now an update on Parler. The company's CEO says he doesn't know when the social media app will return. He says he's optimistic they'll return soon, but that doesn't mean it will happen.
If everything is perfect and we don't lose any more vendors, which won't happen, you're talking, half a week, you'll start losing any more, it could be never. We don't know yet.
Amazon, Apple, and Google banned Parler after the violence at the Capitol. They accuse it of failing to moderate violent content. But Meier says Parler's being held to different standards than other social media companies. He says they are fighting to come back as soon as possible.
We're exploring a lot of options because I think this is really a very big kind of attack on small business, on up and coming startups, and on free speech online. It seems to be that if you're not in the club, you don't get access to the internet.
He says the best thing is if they can get back on Amazon. They already filed a lawsuit to do that, and they're considering suing other vendors too, but didn't elaborate. And President Trump last night called for an end to violence in the country. He says people across all political parties should not tolerate violence and asked his supporters to look for ways to promote peace. President Trump said in his message to the nation late Wednesday, he focused on what he referred to as the troubling events of the past week.
Mob violence goes against everything I believe in and everything our movement stands for. No true supporter of mine could ever endorse political violence. No true supporter of mine could ever disrespect law enforcement or our great American flag.
He says in the past year, political violence had spiraled out of control, noting the many riots, mobs, and acts of intimidation and destruction. He said it must stop.
Whether you are on the right or on the left, a Democrat or a Republican, there is never a justification for violence.
Trump called on his supporters to put their efforts towards easing tensions and helping to promote peace. He says he's aware of planned demonstrations for the coming week and urged that there be no violence, no lawbreaking, and no vandalism of any kind. He says he's directed federal agencies to use all necessary resources to maintain order and hopes for a safe transition to the new administration. The president also gave a few words about the unprecedented moves by big tech companies in recent days that has seen the president removed from various platforms. Some of these moves have also impacted Americans and people from other countries.
These are tense and difficult times. The efforts to censor, cancel, and blacklist our fellow citizens are wrong, and they are dangerous.
He said moving forward in this moment requires us to listen to one another. And new information recently unveiled by the FBI calls into question the argument from some that President Trump caused the breach at the Capitol. A U.S. representative raised those facts during the impeachment hearing. During the certification of electoral votes on January 6th, President Trump gave a speech at a rally outside the Capitol building. The building was breached shortly after, and the crowd there descended into chaos. Claims that President Trump's speech directly caused the breach are now being used to support his impeachment. But the FBI says some people showed an intent to attack the Capitol before the president's remarks.
We developed some intelligence that a number of individuals were planning to travel to the D.C. area with intentions to cause violence. We immediately shared that information and action was taken, as demonstrated by the arrest of Enrique Tarrio by the Metropolitan Police Department the night before the rally. Other individuals were identified in other parts of the country and the travel subsequently disrupted.
The FBI says it has to determine the credibility and viability of each piece of information it gets. During the impeachment hearing, Pennsylvania Representative Scott Perry pointed to the FBI's discovery.
How does the president incite an attack that was pre-planned and already underway before his speech concluded? Now, I know my colleagues on the left want America to believe that the president incited a spontaneous riot that they'd like to call an insurrection, but the facts are stubborn things, even if you choose to ignore them.
The congressman later said the burning, looting, and violence committed in the past year was closer to an insurrection than anything President Trump has said. And officials in Washington, D.C. and surrounding areas issued travel bans to stop people from coming to the Capitol during the upcoming inauguration week. Airbnb has also stepped in to help with their efforts. The home-sharing giant and Hotel Tonight, which Airbnb bought in 2019, are blocking and canceling all hotel reservations in Washington, D.C. area during the week of Biden's inauguration. It made the announcement on Wednesday. Guests will get full refunds, and Airbnb will pay hosts what they would have earned from the canceled reservations. Airbnb added that it's aware of recent reports about armed militias and known hate groups planning to travel to the nation's capital and disrupt the event. The company said it banned from its platform some individuals who were found to have ties with hate groups or were involved in last week's breach of the U.S. Capitol building. And the House voted to impeach President Trump for the second time on Wednesday. So far, this impeachment is the fastest in U.S. history, accomplished in just a single 7-hour session. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is rejecting calls to return the Senate to Washington early to begin the impeachment trial. In a statement, he said there is simply no chance that a fair or serious trial could conclude before President-elect Biden is sworn in next week. Instead, he wants to focus on a safe inauguration and orderly transition of power. Previous presidential impeachment trials in the Senate have lasted anywhere from 3 to 12 weeks. The Democrat-controlled House voted to impeach President Trump over the breach of the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi called President Trump a clear and present danger to the country. Every Democrat voted in favor of impeachment, joined by 10 Republicans. Other Republican House members said the impeachment would further divide the nation. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer accused the president of attempting to create a dictatorship. Schumer said if they convict the president of high crimes and misdemeanors, then they will vote on banning him from running again. McConnell says the Senate impeachment process will begin at the first regular meeting after receiving the articles from the House. The Senate is out of session until January 19th, a day before Biden's inauguration. Biden, meanwhile, called the Capitol breach an armed insurrection against the United States of America and says impeaching President Trump is a means of holding him accountable. He called on the nation to stand together. This comes as a newly elected Congresswoman in Georgia, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, says she'll move to impeach Joe Biden after he's inaugurated. She wrote on Twitter, on January 21st, 2021, I'll be filing articles of impeachment against Joe Biden for abuse of power. Greene also announced her intentions on the conservative American news channel Newsmax. She accused Biden of, quote, being bought out by foreign governments, such as China or Ukraine. But what do you think? Let me know below. Thanks for tuning in to Deep Dive. I'm Tiffany Meier, and see you soon.